Yeah, good morning once again. And I don't know how many of y'all have did join the inauguration program of the PhD coursework as such. But as far as my part is concerned, in the coming days, I would be posting the link of the so-called important lectures I feel you should be attending. Those who are interested in research further can always take an advantage of that and they can attend these lectures. I will try and post the links. The days of these lectures are going to be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Sorry, that means every alternate days, and it's going to be between 3 and 6 in the evening as such. So uh, all the important ones, particularly which would be directly related to the research aspect as such. Say, for example, this Monday we have Professor Kokane from Mumbai University who is going to speak about principles of report writing. What exactly is the pattern and language, and I think after that he's going to speak about tools of resource writing in the sense how can you write your reports as far as theses are concerned using various online tools as such. So I will share it with you. Of course, we plan to record it as well, and I would be posting it on my YouTube channel for access as well. So that is not an issue, but you'll see that one always tends to enjoy and learn more when we are doing it with others rather than doing it at some other leisure point of time as such. Anyway, coming back to what we were doing the day before yesterday is just to revise without keeping anything in front of us in the form of PPTs as such that we saw how water was important, how it's variable, and how that variation brings about a lot of energy changes in the hydrological cycle and the atmospheric conditions as well. We spoke about various measures of, say, quantifying water vapor. The earlier two, which were more theoretical, and after that we came to the other ones cause vapor pressure, and the more commonly used, that's basically relative humidity. And then we spoke about freezing point. Sorry, what was that? Um, Dew point as such. So, and now coming to the fact that, okay, we have seen what is actually happening with water from region to region, and how does this water move? And as I said, that as far as water is concerned, it's after condensation that you start seeing them around you in the atmosphere as such, and that gives you an idea of a lot of things that are happening around you. And that's why you'll see that when nothing seems to be happening, there's always something happening behind the scenes, I would say, as far as the atmospheric, or I would say tropospheric stage of theater is concerned. But for something to happen or some movement to take place, there always needs to be a difference. In the sense, we see that as far as pressure movements are concerned, it happens because of difference. As far as energy, temperature-wise movements are concerned, it happens because of difference. This difference is referred to as an instability. This is instability. As far as instability is concerned, you'll see as far as instability is there in the atmosphere, you'll see that weather phenomena will tend to take place. The moment stability arises, okay, just as we saw in inversion of temperature, if you remember, you'll see that nothing tends to move and nothing tends to happen as far as weather phenomena are concerned. As a consequent, we need to now go into a bit more details about say the condensation, the various forms of condensation. That's not a part of your syllabus. We'll also be speaking about the clouds and the types of clouds for a general interpretation, and then we will go into trying to understand why certain clouds form somewhere and why don't they form others. Why is it that certain clouds will give you precipitation while others will not, and so on and so forth. And in that sense, now let us start with our presentation. And let me come back to this aspect. Okay, So you'll see that from an absolute liquid near the surface, that's your left side, dew, to mist. Mist is obviously going to be the water droplets which are going to be lighter, to the fact that you're going to have fogs also, and then you have the liquid format of it, and then you have a local convectional cycle which is called as hail, and then you'll have the precipitation is which would be in the form of snow. Of course, hail is going to be something that occurs in extraordinary conditions, uh, and that's something that we have to remember over the period of time. If you were to ask me to give you a condition wherein you could be in a position to see everything in one particular stretch as such, I would say this cartoon in front of you. Okay, I call this a cartoon basically because this is a representative one. Such. This is something which is happening near 60 degrees of latitude. Now, what is happening? From the lower latitudes, you will see that this, just give me some time, I'll fix up my stylus. From the lower latitudes, what is happening is that winds are moving into the low pressure of 60 degrees. It forms a low pressure, basically because of the fact that they are warm. And then from, let us say these are the poles, and this is somewhere the equator, not exactly, but I'm giving you the sense of direction that winds are moving from mid latitudes more to say. These are warmer winds, and you are going to have colder winds from the poles. At around 60 degrees, what is happening is that they're meeting each other, and the warm air is climbing up, and the cold air is pushing itself. The right word used in the theory, which we are going to do later, polar front theory, is it's tucking itself down as such. And when they are going to mix into each other, you'll see that at different levels, okay, if you take a section of this mixing, at different levels, you're going to have different types of precipitation. In the sense, you'll see that in this warmer part, okay, you're going to have rain, because you'll see that the warmer part is still to lift off the ground. Some part of this so-called wedge, this is called as WEDG. Some part of this wedge is still touching the ground, and where it is touching the ground, the precipitation is going to be in the form of rainfall here as such. As it starts getting up here, okay, you'll see that a section of it, okay, the wedge is already off the ground, and this section of it is actually filled with cold air as such. And while you're going to have droplets, water droplets here, the moment they move into this direction, into this area here, the freezing temperatures are going to give you say the rain falls, and then it converts into it freezes on cold surfaces. It freezes. You'll see that it is still in the form of water here. Okay, that's in fact called as the phenomenon of freezing rain. It is coming in the form of water. The surfaces are very cold, and then the moment it falls on the surface, it freezes. That's freezing rain. Okay, this is stage one. This is stage two. Now we come to stage three. The wedge has significantly uplifted itself off the ground as such. Okay, while immediately below the wedge, you're going to have some amount of water, but here, this part, okay, the temperatures are freezing. That's 0 degrees centigrade. So when the water droplet is now going to enter this section, this is going to freeze in the form of snow or ice, and that is called as sleet. Sleet is basically water plus ice. Okay, both of them. Okay, you'll see that you have water here, and the lower section is going to be ice as such. I would rather say ice pellets rather than snow as such, basically because here where it's completely cold as such, you'll see that snowflakes are rolling down onto the surface under the influence of the gravity. So in one picture, in one cartoon, you are able to observe all various forms of condensation and effective precipitation out of it as such. Now, if you are to ask me the various types of actual live photographs of this, okay, this is when these are clouds, and I remember when I was traveling from Pune to Guwahati, and I was required to attend a coursework in the Guwahati University. Then um, that section when you climb up, into the highlands of Guwahati. That's a very interesting area, I would rather say. I what was that airport's name? It's basically a military-based airport. Preetham should be knowing this towards Darjeeling side. Not exactly Darjeeling, but in that particular place, there is
Bagdogra Airport.
Bagdogra Airport. Exactly, Bagdogra is a place where that airport, just like Pune Airport, is majority of it is under military control. Basically, because you can obviously the political part of it being that you have your boundaries with so many countries. You have say within 100 kilometers, I believe, from Bagdogra. In different directions, you could have Bhutan, you could have Nepal, and of course, you could have Bangladesh also. And you stretch it more, and you're obviously staring into the eyes of China as well. And that's why the airport stays to be in control of the military. What I was told, I'm not very sure. What I was told is normally they avoid taking offs from the Bagdogra airport beyond 4 o'clock because there is such an upliftment of air because air comes is pushed from the Bay of Bengal into those regions, and of course it is blocked by the Himalayan ranges, the smaller ones, of course, earlier. But then, because of and of course the Indo-Gangetic or the Ganga Brahmaputra plains of Bangladesh, okay, because they are plains, they get heated, and then again on one side it is blocked by the Meghalaya plateau. All of this comes up with such a difficult conditions that literally every other day you're going to have such types of clouds, and I have witnessed them when I was traveling. Then I just happened to pass the we landed at the Bagdogra and then we took off at around 1:30, 2 o'clock, if I'm right, as far as the time was concerned. And by that time, you'll see that plumes of clouds had already started developing, and it was such a wonderful sight. I had photographs of them. I don't remember where I have placed them, but just in case I get hold of them, I will just show it to you. I had, in fact, recorded a small clip of the clouds while the aircraft was lowering down in Guwahati as well. Okay. Anyway, so this is a general thing, and you'll see that while from from the ground you're not able to scale the depth of the clouds as such. Okay, you can certainly do that when you are above the clouds and traveling in a plane as such. Coming from condensation at heights, I would say condensation at near the surface, not exactly on the surface as such, but near the surface. This is going to be fog or mist. The only difference being that the particles of air that float, which are carrying water, of course, the size will differ, and mist will have very minute particles. Fog would have a bit denser particles as such. Now, when the condensation actually occurs on colder surfaces, you're going to call them as let's call them as dew, as such. The exceptional thing that happens in condensation and tossing of this condensed material is going to be hail, and you'll see that the roundness is because of the friction. The whole round is because of the friction and gravitational impact on the water droplet as such. They're perfect rounds, you could say, near to perfect rounds. They're not shaped as, you'll see there is a difference between a water droplet here. Okay, it's like something you're pulling something. It will have a trail here. You don't see a trail as far as the hail is concerned because of the fact that it gets to be tossed up and down before it actually comes to the surface as such. And then these are snowflakes which have gathered, and beautiful picture of snow having precipitated in some region somewhere in the higher latitudes as such. And then something very familiar to us, okay, and the more common form of precipitation, and that's rain in the form of water. And you'll see that the intensity of rain is significantly high. That's the various forms of condensation as such, and this condensation falls out of clouds. And how do we differentiate clouds? You'll see that clouds normally tend to be differentiated on various levels. You have high clouds, you have mid-level clouds, and you have lower clouds as such. I would say majority of the rain, by the way, comes from low clouds, basically because carrying the weight of the water against the force of gravity all to that particular height tends to get very difficult at times. And you'll see that as we go up, Okay, the temperatures are going to fall, and because the temperatures fall, the capacity of air to hold on to moisture is going to be very, very low. And as a consequence, you'll see that majority of the rain comes from clouds which are not more than 1,500 meters, leave aside 2,000. But in conditions like convectional rainfall, you'll see that cumulonimbus clouds are going to build up, okay, in a funnel shaped, and in this case you'll see that their height could raise from around 1700 meters all the way up to 6 kilometers, also at times in fact going beyond that also. But the heaviest of the rain falls between 2000 and 6000 meters, or 5000 meters as such. Okay, you'll see the bulk of it. Okay, besides keeping this aside, the cumulonimbus clouds, as it is called, and you'll see that nimbo basically means water. Okay, so the moment you come across the word which is nimbo, you'll see cumulonimbus. Okay, nimbus means it is going to give water. These are water giving clouds as such. This is how you can remember these terms as such. Stratus is basically strata, that is strata, that's basically layers of clouds as such. So you'll find clouds in layers, and cumulus is basically they built up like a bunch. Okay, that's in fact like a cauliflower, you could say. And cirrus is basically fibers separated out into each other. Okay, cirrostratus is layers of cloud, layers of these cirrus clouds. That's why they combine it into cirrus, and stratus, cirrostratus as such. An important aspect is when you have a lot of cirrostratus clouds, you'll see that if you're looking at heavenly objects like the moon or the sun through them, you would obviously be seeing an halo around them as such. While this was cirrostratus, that's strata based, you'll see that here you have cirrocumulus. That means you're going to have bunches of clouds which are actually together as such. And then in between you have alto. Okay, you have alto cumulus, alto stratus. So basically, remember that nimbus is nowhere involved in non-water clouds. So nimbus or nimbo has to be related to water giving, one. Then you have two types of clouds. Basically, you have stratus, strata. You have cumulus, bunching clouds as such. And then with height, okay, the highest is cirro. Okay, so the height gives it cirro, and the mid ones are called as alto as such. And basically, cloud defining is a combination of all these things being used. I have one more diagram from the Lutyens and Terburg, and this is how actually these various clouds are classified, and you'll see that they are abbreviated also. Absolutely cirrus CI, cirrostratus CS, cirrocumulus CC, altocumulus AC, altostratus AS. It's so very obvious. And stratus is just ST, and then stratocumulus is SC, nimbostratus is NS, cumulus is CU, and cumulonimbus is CB. Okay, so you'll see that only nimbus is something which is different. Otherwise, you'll see that most of them fall out of the same term. And the first term is capital, and the second term is going to be smalls, in smalls as such. What are the characteristics of this? The taller ones. Let us just go back and just see what the cirrus are all about. Okay, this is the group of cirrus clouds. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and what do they say? Thin, delicate, fibrous ice crystal clouds sometimes appear as if they are hooked filaments. Okay, these hooks, sorry, these hooks like things, okay, hooked filaments as such. And of course, you're going to be it looks like a tail of a horse. Okay, and that's why they are called as the mare's tails. Okay, or cirrus uncinus. Okay, then you have, this is of course a Latin word. Cirrostratus, of course, is going to be in strata. Okay, these are going to be sheets of clouds, and they give a milky look to the sky and sometimes produce halos around celestial bodies. This is cirrostratus. And then we come to the third type, the thin white crystal clouds in the form of ripples or waves or globular masses, all in a row. and may produce a mackerel sky. Okay, mackerel in the sense you must be aware of there is a fish called as a mackerel fish, and you will see that the scales of that on the surface of that particular fish is going to be similar to that. The scale of those fish as such, very similar to that, and that's why they are called also called as mackerel sky. Then you come to the mid-level clouds. You'll see that mid-levels will have alto related to it. High level will have Cirrus. Alto is this, and possibly Maruti has named its series after this. That they launched it for the middle class, okay, society of India, and that is why Alto and the series of Alto are called with those names as such, middle class as such. Alto cumulus is white to gray. Okay, gray. See, as I said earlier, that gray clouds would mean more of rain as such. Okay, they make up of various separate globules. Okay, it's like it looks like now while this looks like sorry, while this looks like the scales of a fish, you'll see that though this is very similar, this would look like globules that you see. तुम्ही मेंढी पाहिली असेल तर मेंढीच्या पाठीवर जेव्हा wool उगवते तेव्हा it looks like this, a fully grown wool say cover over a sheep would look like this, and that's why it's called. So हे तुम्ही जेवढं याच्या डिटेल मध्ये जाल तेवढं अभ्यास करणं सोपं असतं. ओके, म्हणजे बरेचसे शब्द जे असतात हे आपल्या अवतीभोवतीच्या याच्यातनच घेतलेले असतात. आपण काय करतो की आता से फॉर एक्झाम्पल एज फार एज मॅकरल इज कन्सर्न, नाउ हॅड आय नॉट टोल्ड यू दॅट मॅकरल इज अ टाइप ऑफ फिश, तुम्हाला वाटलं असतं की आता हे आपल्याला पाठ करावं लागणार आणि बऱ्याच लोकांनी मग पाठ करून ठेवलं असतं की मॅकरल म्हणजे हे असं असं असतं. बट नाव that you know what mackerel relates to, you don't have to remember. So always study in when keeping in mind that you'll have to relate that to something that you're studying to something around you, and that's why you'll see that in geography also relative location stands out as compared to absolute location. Absolute location, you'll see that only geographers and technicians would go into the details, but a layman will ask you in conditions in difficult conditions about the relative location rather than the absolute location. Okay, say for example, you'll see that if we are traveling to our relative's place and we are not able to locate his her house as such, we call them up, and what do they say? They say that, okay, have you come to this particular place? Can you see this to your right? Can you see this to your left? Can you see so and so holding in front of you? Can you see a large yellow building towards your right? So all this is relative location. Now just imagine if that person says that, okay, you know, you are very near to my place, but then uh, my exact location is 18 degrees and so many minutes north, and 84 degrees and so many minutes to the longitude. That person would say it's better to go back home rather than keep hunting for the latitudinal local and longitudinal location as such. So such funny things could happen at times. And then we come to low level clouds, and we'll see that low level clouds are more or less in layers, and that's why they are called as stratus. Stratocumulus is basically rolls and patches and globular, and nimbostratus is an amorphous layer of dark gray clouds. Nimbostratus is normally related to monsoon clouds. You'll see that in during the monsoon season, you would be having a lot of nimbostratus clouds as such, and then clouds which would have a very peculiar and local development are called as cumulonimbus. These are pillowy clouds or billowy clouds, you could say. They have a very flat base. Now, this flat base, remember, is basically because of temperature difference, and they may occur as isolated clouds. They don't mix into each other, and you see that they'll grow at a particular point, and so on and so forth. And another thing is because they don't move horizontally, they tend to grow vertically, and that's why you'll see that they start growing at a height of 1,500 meters and could go as tall as 6,000 meters also. So a cloud which could be as tall as 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers at times, and of course there could be conditions wherein you would have others also. I'll show you a few photographs of different clouds, which, yeah, here it is. You'll see that to start with, we will, sorry, let me see if you are able to check that out. Okay, you're able to see this. So I'll go back to Newton's thing here, and I will enlarge this so that we have a proper idea of what you'll see. That hook shaped or godachi shaped T vagare, all these are cirrus. Okay, these are cirrus. I'll just blow it up further. These are cirrus clouds as such. And then let me take you to cirrostratus clouds. Okay, you'll see that you have layers here. Sorry, yeah, you have layers here and very fine, gentle layers that you can see. But you'll see that the sun is rising, and you can see a significant halo around it. And then we come to what are these? These are the mackerel clouds, cirrocumulus. Okay, I'll see the हे माशासारखं दिसतंय तुम्हाला माशाच्या पाठीसारखं म्हणूयात आपण ह्याला. Okay, if I blow it up, it would look like a sheep's back also. Then this is how it is. These were cirrus, and then let us move to the mid-level clouds. Okay, here you have बरोबर आता ही जे आहे हे काय आहे ए म्हणजे काय ऑल्टोक्युमुलस म्हणजे तुम्ही म्हटलं ना आपण एखादी बकरी असते किंवा मेंढी असते की द बॅक ऑफ अ शीप is being represented in this here. Okay, and then just a moment. Here you have a very dull cloud, which is nothing but an altostratus cloud here. Not a perfect picture. Then this around the light you can see the layers of those clouds as such. And then let us come to, let me see if I can find, yeah, this is a cloud layer. You are going to call this as nimbostratus. You'll see that it is a mixture of shades of gray and white and various shades of gray. Would have a huge amount of water in it. Okay, and then this is something which is called as a cumulus clouds as such. Okay, the bases are flatter and the upper ends are globular, I would say. Okay, and then you have this cloud here, these two. A is the lens shaped lenticellular clouds. Now why do you have this? Okay, they normally occur at the top of one side, or the leeward side I would rather say, as far as mountain range is concerned. And if you search for lenticellular clouds, invariably you'll see that they will show you on the net. Of course, they will give you photographs of either the Kilimanjaro mountain in Africa or the Fujiyama in Japan, because it has to be an isolated range to give you a perfect lenticellular cloud as such, because that one range is going to obstruct the airflow, and the airflow dynamically change crosses the tops, and then it tends to get turbulent because of the unstable conditions on the other side. We're going to come to that as such, and then you see that because of that they press clouds through different layers, and that's why these are called as lenticellular clouds. And then what was this? This is a cumulonimbus cloud. Okay, let me just enlarge it for us, and you can see the scale of the built up as such. Okay, you'll see that it is basically one section has built up here. Sorry, I'm not able to use my stylus here, so it's going up and up and up, but the base is flat, you can see. So that is as far as the cumulonimbus clouds, um, yeah, cumulonimbus clouds are concerned as such. Let us go back to what we were up to, and oh, I need to put this up in this way, and then I need to come out of this. Just a few seconds. Show me the taskbar, and now I'll share that with you, and I will again have to pin it to your screens, and I'll do that in just a moment of time. Here is where the clouds are, different types of clouds. You'll see that the photographs obviously are lesser in number as compared to the classification of clouds, because in some cases it is not as distinct variation as one would want it to be as such. When rain falls, what do you think is going to be the profile of temperature? Okay, and that's very interesting to note, basically, because different profiles are going to give you different types. You are sure we have not done this? Hello, are we sure we have not done this? I'm not done this with you.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, fine. I still somehow have a feeling that I had done this with you, but okay, if you confirm you have not done it, fine. I probably have done it with the undergrad students as such. First and foremost, just a moment. First and foremost, I forgot today, but then okay, let me see if we have time. Yes, we have significant amount of time, so I would like to copy this and show you the different types of rain. This is a YouTube clip. I will stop sharing now. I'll end the show and let me see if I can we can help ourselves with something in YouTube. Just let me set it up. I'll copy this for you and I'll search for it. Control C, YouTube, Control V, enter. Okay, I will hold it for us before I actually come back to you. I share my screen tab, types of precipitation, YouTube. Okay, give me some time. I will pin it to your screens. I'll come back here and now let us watch it.
Let's look at how different vertical temperature variations can result in different types
Let me just
of the
put
surface
up
of the
the,
Earth. I'll start with the straightforward case, depicted on the left.
I'll just take it from the, I'll just the playback speed, I'll just reduce it a bit so that all of us understand.
Let's look at how different vertical temperature variations can result in different types of precipitation at the surface of the Earth. I'll start with the straightforward case, depicted on the left. When temperatures throughout the entire tropical
Now see, why does he say straightforward? Basically because this guy is from a cold region. For him, snow is a very normal thing. For us, snow is not a normal thing, and that is why this guy says a straightforward case. It's not a for us. Straightforward is going to be the right extreme. That's the rain.
troposphere are less than the melting point of ice, and clouds are sufficiently cold enough for ice crystals to grow, only snow can reach the ground. But for scenarios in which temperatures aren't cold enough to sustain snowflakes all the way to the ground, the pink layer represents air with temperatures greater than the melting point of ice. That's
Yes.
0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So over here on the right, when snowflakes fall through a layer of air that is warmer than the melting point of ice, snowflakes start to melt. Assuming that the temperatures in the warm layer are a few degrees above the melting point of ice, snowflakes will melt completely into raindrops, and rain will be the observed precipitation type at the surface if the warm layer extends down to the ground. That seems simple enough, but sometimes in the atmosphere, a warm air sandwich of sorts develops. In other words, there can be a layer of very cold air near the ground, a slab of warm air a few thousand feet aloft, and cold air above the warm slab. When a warm air sandwich develops, that's when sleet and freezing rain enter the picture. When snowflakes melt partially or entirely into raindrops when falling through a warm slab of air, they can refreeze into ice pellets called sleet when the slice of cold air next to the ground is relatively thick. I emphasize that this freezing is contingent on the slice of air next to the ground being thick and cold enough to do the job, because raindrops don't refreeze immediately when entering the bottom slice of cold air. Refreezing takes some time, so having a thick layer of sub-freezing air to fall through assures that the raindrops will refreeze into ice pellets before hitting the surface. Upon hitting the ground, sleet typically bounces. Now, when the layer of cold air near the ground with a temperature less than 0 degrees Celsius isn't thick enough to refreeze the raindrops, freezing rain is the result. When freezing rain is observed, liquid raindrops don't have time to freeze in the layer of cold air near the ground, so they become supercooled, which means that they're liquid that exists at temperatures less than the melting point. These supercooled raindrops freeze on contact with cold objects such as untreated roads and sidewalks, power lines, and trees. Freezing rain creates a slippery glaze, and when heavy, it can produce devastating ice storms as the weight of ice accumulating on tree branches and power lines brings them down. Let's look at how different vertical temperature variations can result.
So that was it. And let me stop presenting and let us now go back and try to understand. Uh, gosh. Anyway, we'll use this instead of wasting much time as such. So this is the very same thing I would say we need to see. I'll try to enlarge it. I'll try to put it up to this level. Let us see how well we can adjust to it. This is the rain part of it. Okay, it's so very. I found that clip to be very interesting, and because rain is normal on our end, we'll start with rain as such. Okay, you'll see that to the right side of your screen. I don't know whether you're able to see this. Let me just pin it to your screens. Yeah. To the right side of the screen, you have the temperature profile, and to the just a moment, where was it? Yeah, and to the right and to the left side, you actually what is happening around as such. Okay, you'll see that what happens with the temperature is that on the surface it's 20 degrees, but as you move up, it goes towards minus 20 degrees as such. Sorry. So now this is going to be the cloud here, and this cloud is now going to precipitate in the form of snow all till the point that you come to this level. Okay, it's plus 0 now, plus 0, and beyond 0 now it starts coming in the form of rain, and when it touches ground it is around 15 degrees centigrade as such. That's rain for us. Then let us move to snow. Okay, you'll see that the profile continuously stays within 0 degrees as such. Okay, so right from top to down it is below 0 degrees, so there's no question about having any intermediate sources as such. So snow from the top all the way to the round bottom snow as such. As far as glaze is concerned, okay, this glaze is nothing but of sort of freezing rain, I would say. Okay, just let me check if I'm right, so that I can confirm. Yeah. Okay, this is glaze. What happens in a glaze is this is moving into positives for some time and then it goes back into the negative as such. Here again you have the snow, you have the precipitation in the form of ice, and then the temperatures go beyond 0, so the snow melts and you're going to have rain, but near the surface once again you're going to have colder surfaces, but the distance to be traveled is so less, and as a consequence it's only after it touches the ground that it freezes. That's called as freezing rain, or this called as glaze as well. And finally, let us also go into the sleet aspect as such. Now, what does sleet basically mean? It's the same as glaze, but you'll see that the amount of time available for refreezing is much more. and you'll see that the presenter was calling it as say refreezing of this water. Okay, so flake formation here, refreezing, sorry, melting here, refreezing of this melted into sorry, pellets, and that's called as sleet as such. Okay, so that is uh, the four types of precipitation, how it changes when we come through different directions, or rather, I would say vertical layers as such. Okay, so that is as far as different layers are concerned. Now, why does this change? How does this change? All these profiles are concerned. Let us move into something that is very interesting as such. Okay, these are called as the temperature profiles at different conditions as such. Okay, we all know. I'll have to shift to this, and what I'll do is I'll put this up in a different way. Just give me some time. I will stop presenting this and I will start presenting something, a larger picture of the same. This is one drawback I would say as far as online is concerned. You just don't have a blackboard. You have everything just on one small screen in front of you, and we have to do all those things right away. So, yeah, when there is a no, okay, on and this axis, what you have is temperature in degrees centigrade. So this is 0 degrees and this is 10 degrees. And this is height in kilometers. Okay, this is 1 km for you. So obviously this is going to be 200 meters, 400 meters, 600 meters, 800 meters, and so on and so forth. As I said, that all the type of precipitation, the intensity, etc., post condensation is dependent on something which is called as stability and instability. As such, now the stability and instability will depend on how fast the air cools as you rise. Now, normally in economic sense, this is going to be steep. Okay, but as far as stability is concerned, this is going to be gentle because of the fact that the fall in the temperature is going to be very, very gentle. Okay, from 10 degrees, okay, at 200 meters, at 400 meters, at 600 meters, it's only around at around 800 meters that the temperature falls from by 2 degrees. On the other extreme, you will see that from 10 degrees, within the first 200 meters, the temperature has fallen by 4 degrees. And another 200 meters, it falls by another 400 degree, 4 degrees centigrade. And within, say, what, another 100 meters, it has in fact fallen by another 2 degrees as such. So this is going to be a very steep fall. On the other hand, you're going to have a very gentle fall in a case where it is the atmospheric or the weather conditions are going to be stable. This side, if the lapse rate is going to be slow, the conditions are going to be stable. No wonder you'll see that as far as a convectional rain or a thunderstorm is concerned during early summer or during October, November is concerned. That has to do with instability, a lot of instability when the ground is very, very hot and the clouds climb up to form what we have just seen as cumulonimbus clouds. All of that is going to happen here, unstable conditions as well. They will not happen here. But in between, you have what is called as moderate condition, which is called as conditional stability, conditional instability, wherein there are going to be some reasons why the air is unstable and so on and so forth. And on the either side, you're going to have saturated adiabatic lapse rate, and here you have unsaturated adiabatic lapse rate. As far as adiabatic is concerned, we're going to come to that. As far as saturation and unsaturation is concerned, we have seen this, that you have ample amount of water which fills in all the pore spaces, air spaces, but It is not leaking it out, just saturated. Okay, it's in a perfect balance. That's called as unsaturated. And if not in a balance, you're going to call it as an unsaturated condition as such. These are the different types of rainfall. We are not going to go into the details of these, but just to mention, because these conditions are an output of, let me tell you that these conditions are an output of what we are actually seeing here in more of a diagrammatic condition. That's why we need to look at those. Okay, what you see at this in this diagram in front of you, okay, the environmental lapse rate. Okay, you compare it with the standardized lapse rate, and that will result into orographic rainfall, that will result into convectional rainfall, and that may result into other things happening. Of course, that will result into frontal wedging. The first of the cartoon that I showed you, it's basically like this. If you can remember, and if I can draw it here, okay, this was the section of it, that the warm part is touching the ground. This is going to be rain. Okay, this part, the small part, is now, okay, so this is going to be freezing rain. Okay, or we said this is glaze part. This is amply up here now. Okay, so this is going to be what, the third type of precipitation. And of course, this is going to be snow all the way here, because from top to bottom everything is cold here as such. So it's the same cartoon that we saw to start with, that has changed into a beautiful block diagram of what is happening. And you can imagine the scale of this. You can see a small city here as such. It looks to be small, but it has skyscrapers in them and so on and so forth. So you can imagine the scale at which all this happens at around 60 degrees north latitude. Okay, we're going to do this all this again in what is called as the frontal theory. Okay, now this is something that I will introduce and then I will stop, because when we come back on Wednesday, we would be required to go into understanding the details as such. This is adiabatic. That means no loss or no gain of heat. What is the normal adiabatic lapse rate? It is 6.5 degrees per kilometer. First look into this, then we'll go into the diagram, and let's see if we have more time after that. Now, how is this calculated? This is an averaged figure. This is averaged. What do? They take the surface temperature, they go to the tropopause, they take the temperature there, they get to the difference between these two temperatures, and they get the difference of the thickness, the kilometers as such. You divide that thickness by the number of kilometers, and you get the per kilometer ratio. So it's going to be 6.5 per kilometer as such. Then you have wet adiabatic lapse rate. Okay, that's saturated. How much of moisture that a particular layer can carry. Okay, now this saturated layer, when it is going to go up, slow cooling due to more moisture. Because of the moisture, it does not let loose fast. So that is going to be around 4 degrees as such. When the air is dry, the lapse rate is going to be faster. See, when the air is wet, the lapse rate is slow, only 4 degrees per thousand meters. This is going to be 10 degrees per 1,000 meters. At times, there are cases where in severe storms, it could be 12 degrees. Extreme cases, it's going to be beyond 12 degrees also. So just imagine within 1 kilometer, the temperature is going to change very, 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 very fast as such. And then you're going to have these conditions of absolute stability, conditional instability, absolute instability, conditional stability, sorry, and absolute instability as such. How do you read this diagram as such? Okay, don't look into this part. We don't measure it in Fahrenheit. We are going to measure it in centigrade scale as such. This is 32 degrees Celsius, so it's already going to be very, very warm as such. Now, as the temperature of the rising air parcel, okay, as you go up, what is going to happen? You'll see that from 32.2, it has fallen to 29, okay, and another few degrees. Okay, of course, this is in feet now. Let me remind you, this is not in meters. So normally 3,000 feet is going to be 1000 meters as such. So now if you see between 32 and 23, there is a difference of around what, 9 degrees, approximately 9 degrees. So this is dry adiabatic lapse rate. This is dry adiabatic lapse rate. At this level, say around a kilometer, condensation starts to occur, and because of condensation, it transfers into, condensation occurs means what? The moisture is let out, isn't it? Because the moisture is let out, it immediately goes into what is called as wet adiabatic lapse rate. So from 3000 to 6000 feet, that's going to be another kilometer as such. You'll see that the temperatures have not fallen much. Okay, this is 17.6. So let us say this is 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. This is 5. Okay, so this is near this number as such. Okay, this, because of this condition, this change has occurred, and that is why this is called as conditional stability. I'm going to go into the details of that. Don't worry if you're not understanding right away as such, because we have very beautiful explanations to all this happening in coming up for you all. Of course, not today. This is absolute instability. Okay, this is this is absolute stability. Sorry, and this is the output of absolute stability, and then you have absolute instability on a very hot day. You'll see this is the cumulonimbus cloud that is developing, and that's why it is called as instability. It doesn't tend to get stable. It keeps on growing. It could go to 6 kilometers and so on and so on. And then it is conditional instability. Your conditions have changed, and that's why you're going to have conditional instability as such. Okay, just to give you a broad idea of what we are going to do when we meet next time. That's all for today, because I don't want to confuse you all further. I'll stop sharing and then I'll end the show here. And let me come back to this. Okay, fine. So this is what happens when we are moving from the hydrological cycle to condensation, and the forms of condensation, and how the temperatures around are going to affect the condensation as such. It's this temperature versus the temperature of the condensing substance that is going to bring up various combinations of precipitation and so on and so forth. How long is the precipitation going to be? How much is it going to be? And so on and so forth. It's going to be very, very interesting to note that. I'll just ask you for if you have any questions for me today. If you don't have any questions, then I think, yeah, Aishwarya or Tushar. Yeah, Tushar. Go ahead with your question.
So like the factor affecting evaporation मध्ये सर ते सॅलिनिटीचं फक्त आता बुक मध्ये इतकंच दिलंय की हाय सॅलिनिटी अँड लो इव्हॅपोरेशन अँड लो सॅलिनिटी हाय इव्हॅपोरेशन, बट रिझन नाही दिलंय की असं का होतं.
काय म्हटलंस तुम्हाला लिहून घेऊ दे, आय कॅन एक्सप्लेन इट. मला कळलं ते. हाय सॅलिनिटी,
हाय सॅलिनिटी, लो इव्हॅपोरेशन रेट,
अँड लो सॅलिनिटी, हाय इव्हॅपोरेशन. मी तुम्हाला त्या दिवशी कशाचं उदाहरण दिलं होतं? मीठ आणि पाणी मिक्स करायचं उदाहरण कशाचं दिलं होतं मी त्या दिवशी? काय बनवतो आपण ते मीठ आणि पाणी किंवा बर्फ ठेवून? तुम्ही ते पाहिलं नाही का रे पोरांनो? ते आईस्क्रीमचे डब्बे मिळायचे, फार मस्त असायचं ते. आम्ही लहानपणी भरपूर हे. आता काय सगळं हे अमूल बिमूल एवढं इंटेन्सिव्हली मार्केटिंग करतात, ती मजाच गेली सगळी की घरी आईस्क्रीम बनवायची.
Sir, the pot ice cream you are saying, like you have to put.
हा आजकाल ते ती भैया लोक असतात, ती ही मुंबईची नाही का ऐश्वर्या,
आहे तो
भैया लोकांकडे. पण तो पॉट म्हणजे ते कसं आहे, ते विक्री करायला आणतात तेव्हा तो पॉट. आय एम रेफरिंग की तुम्ही तो पॉट घरी घेऊन यायचे. आतमध्ये तो ॲल्युमिनियम,
बर्फ म्हणजे तो मीठ लावून बर्फ टाकायचा आणि
एक्झॅक्टली. तर नाव द अदर डे वी वर डिस्कसिंग अबाउट दिस पर्टिक्युलर एक्झाम्पल. Now, what he has found out, Tushar, is that high salinity means low evaporation rate. Why will the evaporation be low when the salinity is high? You'll see that with salt mixing with water, salt mixed with water, the tendency of water to move away from this solution is going to be lower. Escape la त्याला जेवढी energy लागे, okay, the amount of energy required to escape from a saline solution is going to be higher, and that is why where salinity is going to be higher, you'll see that the evaporation is going to be lower. But on the other hand, when the salinity is lower, it's so very easy for water to escape into the air, because now you don't have a substance where water is mixed with and then you have to separate out the substance, or water will have to release itself out of the bonding of that particular substance to go up into the air. So that is the I would say the best scientific explanation I would do, that water and salt together will not allow water to separate very fast, and that's why the cells with high salinity, evaporation is low. On the other hand, when the salinity itself is low, obviously it allows it to evaporate much faster as such. So that's the possible explanation that I could think of when it comes to salinity and evaporation as such.
थँक्यू सर. आणि सर आपण जे बघत होतो की टेम्परेचर जसं इन्क्रीज होत जातं तसं इव्हॅपोरेशन रेट वाढत जातो. बट सर अशी कंडिशन येऊ शकते का की टेम्परेचर इन्क्रीज होत आहे आणि इव्हॅपोरेशन रेट वाढतोय आणि तिथे विंड फ्लो नाही करत आहे. विंड फ्लो नाही करत आहे तर एअर ऑलमोस्ट 90% सॅच्युरेटेड आहे तिथलं एअर. सो इव्हॅपोरेशन रेट पूर्ण 0 होऊ शकतोय का तिथला, बिकॉज वरती एअर पूर्ण सॅच्युरेटेड आहे आणि टेम्परेचर पण इन्क्रीज होतंय.
नाही, सी इफ यू रिमेंबर द डायग्राम ऑफ वेपर प्रेशर, ते 4 आपण हे केक का बघितले होते, चौथ्या ह्याच्यात खाली ते हे लावलं होतं आपण, बर्नर लावलं होतं वगैरे वगैरे, वेपर प्रेशर वर ते गॉजेस वगैरे होते. If you remember the middle two diagrams, diagram B and C, you'll see that while this is happening, see this is a dynamic system, की एका ठिकाणी तुमचं इव्हॅपोरेशन होतंय आणि जोपर्यंत सॅच्युरेशन लेवल होत नाहीये तोपर्यंत ते इव्हॅपोरेशन होत राहणार आहे. सॅच्युरेशन लेवल झाली म्हणजे प्रेसिपिटेशन होणार नाही अशी कुणीही गॅरंटी देऊ शकत नाही, बिकॉज द सिस्टम इज डायनॅमिक. प्रेशर सिस्टम्स मे चेंज, temperatures may change because of the change in pressure or temperature. As I said, that you don't have to wait till 100% relative humidity for it to precipitate. Theoretically, you are right. Theoretically, you are right that if it's going to be balanced, then there is going to be no instability. If there is going to be no instability, there is going to be no further evaporation. But in actual conditions, it does not happen that way. It does not work that way. एखादी छोटी वाऱ्याची झुळूक, something very minor thing happening in that particular area may again lead to some amount of precipitation. When the precipitation comes in, again there is an imbalance, and again you start the whole process of evaporation and moving towards saturation. हे अविरत चालू असतं. It's an absolute. See, for a moment of time, what you say theoretically could run true, but for a long period of time, because you're speaking about a gas is very dynamic, okay, and it keeps on changing places and changing volume as per temperature and pressure as such. You can't say that this could be a very practical situation. The situation would change very much dynamically as such. Yeah, I would just call out your attendance. Aishwarya Limaye, Ajay Shinde, Akash Shilke, अक्षय हरगुडे, असावरी काळे, प्राजक्ता जाधव, प्रीतम घोष, रेवती शिंदे, रोहित गायकवाड, रोहित इथापे, ऋषिकेश आगलागे, श्रेया चव्हाण, सुमित ननावरे, सुनील राठोड, तुषार खोथुळे, उषा वसावे. आज काय ती भामरे आली नाही वाटतं, तिचं नाव शेवटी असतं भामरे का भारमल. एनिवे, सो दॅट्स ऑल फॉर टुडे. I'll post the lecture in our group after it's available with me on the drive, and eventually I upload it up on the Facebook, my YouTube channel as well. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. We'll meet next week. You can leave the meeting. Thank you very much.